You know that moment when you realize everything you've built was based on lies. When you discover that the people closest to you see you only as a source of money? I lived this nightmare awake. For years, I opened my wallet, my heart, my home. I paid astronomical bills without question. I believed every story, every promise, every pleading look. But that day, when the phone rang and I heard that desperate scream on the other end, a voice pierced with fury, demanding an explanation about the blocked card, something inside me broke definitively. Minutes later, my own son burst through my door like an intruder, his eyes bloodshot with rage, his hands shaking with indignation. They looked at me as if I were a monster, as if I had committed an unforgivable crime. Little did they know that I had uncovered everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every embezzled penny. I had irrefutable evidence, documents that would reveal the naked truth. And what happened next? The price they had to pay was so devastating that it changed our lives forever. Stay until the end, because what I did will leave you speechless. Before we dive into this truly shocking story, I need a special favor. If this kind of authentic content touches your heart, please subscribe to this channel now and activate the all notification bell. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's the fuel that keeps this work alive and reaching people who need to hear true stories like this. Share with your friends, family, and colleagues. Everyone deserves to hear stories that make us reflect on values, family, and dignity. And tell me, from which country and city are you watching us right now? Leave your comment. I promise every second of this story is worth it. The ending will absolutely shock you. So take a deep breath, sit back, and prepare for an intense emotional journey. My name is Sabrina, and what I'm about to reveal has completely transformed every aspect of my existence. It all began on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday in March. The sun streamed through my kitchen windows as I brewed fresh coffee. The aroma filled the room, bringing that comforting sense of morning routine. My phone was resting on the marble counter when it vibrated insistently. It was a notification from the bank. Confirmation of a block on an additional card linked to my main account. I stared at the message with grim satisfaction. Yes, I had deliberately requested that block. Every move had been calculated, planned, and executed with surgical precision. I knew exactly what was coming next. It was only a matter of time. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring both the drink and the anticipation of what was to come. I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through a magazine without really absorbing a single word. My mind was completely focused on the unfolding events I had set in motion. It didn't take 10 minutes for the phone to ring. The shrill sound cut through the morning silence. I glanced at the screen. It was her. I took a deep breath, mentally preparing myself, and answered. Amanda shouted on the other end of the line, "What the hell did you do, Sabrina? The card is blocked. I just went through the most embarrassing humiliation of my life." I was at the supermarket. The cart was full. There was a huge line behind me, and the card was declined. Decline, in front of everyone. People looked at me like I was a criminal trying to use a stolen card. Her voice rose to hysterical pitch. She could picture the scene perfectly. Amanda standing at the checkout, her face flushed with embarrassment and indignation. Curious shoppers watching the drama unfold. I kept my voice absolutely calm, almost soft. Amanda, we need to have a serious conversation about this, in person. This isn't a phone conversation, she replied with pure venom in her voice. Talk. You blocked my card without the decency of prior notice. What kind of person does something so cruel and petty? You purposely sabotaged me, I said, keeping my tone balanced. It wasn't your card. It never was. It was an additional charge to my account, under my responsibility, and I made a decision that needed to be made. Amanda practically spat the words. Decision? You want to destroy me. You've always hated me. You've always looked for ways to make me suffer. I hung up the phone unceremoniously. There was absolutely no point in continuing that argument over the phone. She was irrational, explosive, incapable of productive conversation in that emotional state. Furthermore, I knew perfectly well that I would have visitors very soon. I calmly got up, washed my cup, dried it, and put it away in the cupboard. Every movement was deliberate, almost ritualistic. I walked to the living room and sat in the leather armchair strategically positioned facing the front door. I placed a cup of hot green tea on the glass side table. I grabbed a book from the shelf, opened it to a page, but didn't read a word. My eyes were on the door, my body relaxed but alert, my heart beating at a strong but controlled pace. It wasn't fear, it was determination crystallized in human form. 15 minutes dragged by. Each second felt stretched, elastic. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of tires screeching against asphalt, a car braking too suddenly, the gate being flung open. Heavy, angry footsteps hammering the cobblestone sidewalk leading to the entrance. The door flew open. I purposely never locked it during the day. My son, Lucas, burst forth like a raging storm. He roared, his voice echoing off the walls. "Mom! What the hell is going on here? Amanda is completely distraught. You blocked her card without any explanation, without any warning. How could you do something like that?" I remained exactly where I was, still as a statue, holding my teacup in both hands. I slowly raised my gaze until I met his eyes, those same eyes that filled me with immeasurable pride when he was born, when he took his first steps, when he graduated from university. Now those eyes stared at me with something close to hatred. I spoke with a serenity that contrasted violently with his agitation. "Sit down, Lucas. Let's have a conversation that should have happened a long time ago." He replied in a thunderous voice, "I'm not sitting down at all. I want answers immediately. You're creating completely unnecessary problems, destroying our family relationship for reasons I can't even understand." Amanda appeared right behind him, her arms crossed defensively over her chest, her face still stained red from recent anger. Her eyes glared at me like invisible daggers. She said with palpable disdain, "I always suspected. I always knew you didn't really accept me in this family. Now you're showing your true colors. The mask has slipped." I stood up with slow, deliberate movements. Every gesture was charged with purpose. I walked to the dark wood sideboard where, days before, I had placed a bulky brown briefcase. I picked it up firmly. I said, keeping absolute control over my voice, "You demand answers. I will provide them all. Every detail, every number, every inconvenient truth you chose to ignore. But first, sit down. This will take a long time." Something in my tone must have conveyed irrefutable seriousness. Lucas hesitated, his body tense like a violin string about to snap. Finally, he slumped back on the couch with obvious reluctance, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Amanda remained standing, defiant, as if sitting down meant capitulation. I opened the folder methodically. Inside were months of quiet investigative work, meticulously organized bank statements, highlighted credit card statements, carefully filed receipts, wire transfer records, detailed spreadsheets. I began spreading the documents out on the glass coffee table, paper after paper, evidence after evidence, building an irrefutable mosaic of financial truth. He said, pointing to the growing pile of documents, "In the last 18 months, just 18 months, exactly $143,782 have been spent on the additional card I provided you. 143,000. Let that number sink deep into your consciousness for a long moment." Lucas frowned deeply, confusion mixing with defensiveness. He spoke in a raised voice. "You always knew we were using that card. You never, ever, ever voiced any objection. Why the hell complain now?" I allowed a bitter smile, filled with sadness and disappointment, to briefly touch my lips. I responded with weight in my words. True, I never complained, because I trusted blindly. because I naively believed that you would use that resource responsibly, maturely, discerningly, for genuine emergencies, real needs, unpredictable situations. But observe here, observe very carefully. I picked up a specific invoice from 3 months ago. My fingers traced the printed lines as I read aloud, each item pronounced with crystal clarity. French restaurant La Maison d'Or, dinner for two, $2,347. Versailles Collection Designer Clothing Boutique, $4,590. Azure Waters Luxury Spa Complete Weekend Package, $1,860. Brilliance Jewelry Earring Set, $3,200. Premium Motors Dealership, down payment on a convertible sports car, exactly $25,000. Amanda rolled her eyes dramatically, letting out an exaggerated sigh of impatience. She replied with impressive arrogance, "So what? And what exactly is the problem? You have plenty of money saved up. Mountains of money. Why the hell shouldn't we be able to enjoy ourselves a little, enjoy life? You live alone in this huge house. You don't spend on anything. You hoard and hoard without purpose." I felt my jaw clench involuntarily, the muscles in my neck tensing, but I forced myself to maintain my outward calm. He said slowly, each word carefully chosen. "Because this money wasn't spare, as you so blithely suggest. This money represents decades of brutal, relentless work. It represents careful investments, thoughtful financial decisions, personal sacrifices you've never witnessed or understood, and most crucially, because you blatantly lied to me." Lucas stood up abruptly from the couch, as if he had been electrocuted. He spoke indignantly. "What exactly did we lie about? We never hid anything from you. We've always been transparent." I pulled another document from the stack, a series of text messages and social media posts that I had printed out and organized chronologically. I replied with increasing hardness in my voice. "Lies of omission are also lies, Lucas. Lies that distort the truth are equally despicable. Do you remember perfectly well when you came to me 7 months ago, tears in your eyes, your voice breaking, saying you desperately needed to borrow $15,000? He paled visibly, his face losing color. Lucas said hesitantly, "Yes, of course I remember. We urgently needed to fix the roof. It was leaking badly, causing serious structural damage to the house. You helped us generously. We greatly appreciate that." I threw the printed sheets onto the table hard enough to make them slide across the glass. I spoke, raising my voice for the first time, letting the contained anger finally escape. There was no damaged roof, no leaks, no structural damage. This entire story was a complete and blatant fabrication. That $15,000, every penny of it, funded your extra honeymoon in Dubai. I have Amanda's beautifully documented Instagram posts here, showing you in a 5-star hotel with views of the Burj Khalifa, dinners in revolving skyscraper restaurants, helicopter rides over the desert, shopping in luxury malls. The silence that fell over the room was absolute, heavy as lead. Amanda had the momentary decency to look slightly uncomfortable, her eyes briefly averting, but she quickly regained her defensive, aggressive posture. She said with cutting disdain, "Are you investigating us? Tracking our social media like a private detective? This is pathetic, bordering on obsessive. You need a life of your own." I walked slowly until I was directly in front of her, our eyes level. I replied with glacial coldness, "Pathetic is blatantly lying to your mother-in-law, exploiting maternal trust. Pathetic is using the sweat, blood, and tears of decades of other people's labor to finance extravagant frivolities while fabricating tragic stories of need. Pathetic is having zero gratitude, zero integrity, and zero shame." Lucas ran both hands over his face, clearly torn between defending his wife and processing the bombshell information being revealed. He spoke, desperately trying to diffuse the situation. "Mom, maybe we overreacted in some specific things, made errors in judgment, But, interrupt abruptly, overkill, overfeet. Lucas, you two have built a completely unsustainable lifestyle based solely on my money. When was the last time, tell me honestly, when was the last time you paid a single significant bill with genuinely your own funds? The silence returned, even heavier, more suffocating. Amanda broke the silence with venomous cynicism. You're complaining now, after years of voluntarily paying for everything, after repeatedly offering help? That doesn't make any sense. You're contradictory. I took a step forward, slightly invading his personal space. He said, looking deeply into her eyes, "It makes perfect sense when I finally realize that I have been systematically transformed into a mere financial instrument. When I recognize the pattern, visits only happen when they need something. Phone calls only happen when they want money. My company is merely tolerated, never genuinely desired or appreciated." Amanda looked away first, unable to meet my piercing gaze. Lucas tried to intervene again, his voice thick with emotion. "That's not true. That's not fair. We genuinely love you." I walked back to my chair and sat down, picking up another envelope, this one significantly thicker than the previous ones. I replied with deep and real sadness in my voice. Love is not measured exclusively in pretty words and empty declarations. Lucas, true love is measured concretely in consistent actions, in presence, in reciprocity. And your actions, each one of them, speak a truth completely different from your words. Amanda crossed her arms even tighter, her knuckles white with tension. She said sarcastically, "Consequences, how dramatic you are. What are you going to do? Disinherit us completely, cut family ties. What cheap theater?" A small, calculated, and utterly humorless smile appeared on my face. I replied with frightening calm, "Not exactly disinherit, but you're going to learn about responsibility, consequences, and the value of money the hard way." I opened the thick envelope and took out official, stamped, signed legal documents. I explained methodically. These documents represent fundamental and permanent changes. First point, all additional cards linked to all my bank accounts have been permanently and irrevocably canceled. There is no appeal. Second point, the monthly allowance Lucas religiously received, $5,000 that was supposed to help with everyday expenses, is suspended indefinitely, starting immediately. Lucas practically jumped off the couch, his eyes wide with panic. He spoke in alarm. "You can't do that. You can't just cut everything at once. We depend financially on this money. We have commitments, obligations, bills to pay." I replied without showing any emotion. "I can. And I'm doing just that right now. You both have jobs. Lucas, you work at a well-established tech company with a more than decent salary. Amanda, you theoretically have your own online boutique. It's time, long overdue, for you to live exclusively within your own genuine means." Amanda let out a loud, incredulous laugh, bordering on hysteria. She said with venom, "My own means? My boutique barely covers basic operating costs. You know that perfectly well." "I'm practically operating at a loss," I answered directly, without softening. "I know for sure that you work about 3 hours a day in this boutique and spend the rest of your precious time on expensive lunches with friends, endless salon sessions, and recreational shopping. Maybe real dedication and hard work will finally produce real results and profits." She replied deeply indignantly, "You have no right to judge my life, my choices, how I spend my time." He said with unwavering firmness, "I have every right when I'm fully financing this luxurious life that you think is standard fare. But no longer. Those days are definitely over." Lucas began to pace nervously back and forth across the room, clearly disturbed, his hands in his hair. He spoke, desperately trying to negotiate. "Mom, please, maybe we can talk about this more calmly, rationally. I understand that you're upset, hurt, and feeling used, but cutting off absolutely everything at once, without transition." I replied inflexibly. "There's no negotiation here, Lucas. This isn't capricious punishment or emotional revenge. It's a necessary, fundamental lesson that should have happened years ago. You need to grow, mature, learn. Amanda made another deeply venomous comment. You're acting exactly like a spoiled child who isn't getting enough attention. This is the tantrum of a needy adult. I stood up again and walked toward her with slow, measured steps. My voice was low, but charged with an intensity that made the words vibrate. These spoiled brat. I started working at 16. I built a solid career at a time when women were still systematically seen as inferior and incapable in the professional market. I invested every penny I earned with wisdom, discipline, and a long-term vision. I made brutal sacrifices that you will never understand because you never experienced true hardship. And I used resources that took me literally decades to accumulate, genuinely believing I was helping my family and building a legacy. Never call me spoiled when you've never known what true effort, true struggle, or true sacrifice is. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear the wall clock ticking. Even Amanda seemed to be momentarily lost for words, her face pale. Lucas finally spoke, his voice significantly lower, almost a whisper. What exactly do you want from us then? What's your ultimate goal with all of this? I returned to my chair, sitting up straight. I answered clearly. I want them to grow genuinely, to deeply understand the true value of money, to stop seeing me exclusively as an inexhaustible and magical source of resources, and most importantly, I want genuine and authentic respect, not superficial and self-serving courtesy. Amanda found her voice, still deeply defensive. And how exactly are we supposed to do all this without any financial support? You're throwing us to the wolves, he said with a casual shrug. The exact same way millions of people do every day around the world. Work more hours, spend significantly less, prioritize real needs over superfluous desires. Absolutely revolutionary concepts, I know. Lucas sat down again, this time with less obvious aggression. He seemed to be truly starting to process everything. He said calmer, we have accumulated bills to pay, financial commitments made based on completely irresponsible and childish assumptions, but I have a proposal, a challenge if you prefer. They both looked at me simultaneously with a mixture of desperate hope and deep distrust. I continued explaining, I'm going to give you exactly 6 months, half a year. In that specific period, you can and should concretely prove that you are capable of managing your lives independently and responsibly. If at the end of those 6 months, you demonstrate genuine and sustainable change, not in empty words, but in measurable actions, we can renegotiate our financial relationship. But under completely different terms. Amanda asked with obvious suspicion. What different terms specifically? I answered clearly. Total and absolute financial transparency, previously agreed and respected budgets, regular accountability, and most importantly, a complete reconstruction of family relationships based on genuine mutual respect, not selfish financial convenience. Lucas looked at Amanda for a long time, her expression hard but clearly shaken internally. He spoke hesitantly. What if we don't make it within those 6 months? What if we fail? He said without any hesitation, then you will go your separate ways, indefinitely. There will be no more financial support from me, and most likely our family relationship will never be remotely the same again. Amanda finally exploded completely. This is blatant emotional blackmail, cruel manipulation. You're forcing us to choose between personal pride and basic survival. What mother does that? I replied with renewed harshness. Blackmail is precisely what you did to me for years. You systematically used maternal guilt, manipulated situations by creating false emergencies, and created completely fabricated narratives to extract money. This ends definitively today, right now, at this very moment. Lucas stood up and walked slowly to the large window overlooking the garden, his hands deep in his pockets. He stood there completely still, staring out without really seeing anything. He said without turning around, his voice thick with emotion, "How the hell did we get to this terrible point?" I replied with absolutely genuine sadness permeating my voice. "Because you allowed your wife to completely dictate the core values of your marriage. Because you consistently forgot the lessons I desperately tried to teach you throughout your upbringing. Because you repeatedly chose the easy way out, the most convenient solution, always avoiding real accountability." He turned around slowly, and I could clearly see his eyes filled with unshed tears. Lucas spoke in a deeply choked voice. "Are you directly saying that I have completely failed as a son? That I have let you down irreparably?" My own voice trembled slightly for the first time. "I'm saying you've completely lost your way. You've strayed from the values I've tried to instill in you. But I still believe, I still hold out hope, that there's a real chance you'll find yourself again. You'll rediscover who you truly are." Amanda let out a theatrically exaggerated sigh of impatience. She said with heavy sarcasm, "All this drama, all this elaborate staging, all for the sake of money. Absolutely unbelievable and pathetic." I replied, looking directly and intensely at her. "It's not fundamentally about money, Amanda. It was never really about monetary values. It's about personal character, moral integrity, basic human values that clearly mean absolutely nothing to you." She responded with explosive anger. "You don't really know me. You don't know anything about me," he said with frightening calm. "I know enough. I know very well someone who consistently sees people as exploitable resources, not as human beings with feelings, someone who always has their hand out, demanding more but never, ever offers anything in return." Lucas came back and placed his hand firmly on Amanda's shoulder, silently asking her to control herself. He spoke to me with evident tiredness. "We need significant time to process absolutely all of this." I simply replied, "Take all the time you need." But the 6-month clock has officially started ticking, starting right now. Amanda pulled Lucas roughly by the arm. She said sharply, "Let's leave immediately. I don't need to stay here a second longer listening to endless insults." Lucas looked at me one last long time before letting himself be dragged away. There was something profoundly different in his eyes, perhaps the first small but real glimmer of genuine understanding. When the door finally closed behind them with a thud, I sank completely into the chair. My entire body began to shake uncontrollably with all the adrenaline pent up from the brutal confrontation. But surprisingly, there was not a hint of regret, just a strange, heavy, profound relief, as if I had finally lifted a gigantic weight I had been carrying for years without consciously realizing it. The following days were plunged into absolute and complete silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no emails, deafening silence. Part of me, I admit, secretly hoped they'd call quickly, begging, promising dramatic changes, asking for forgiveness. Another, more realistic and experienced part knew perfectly well that deeply wounded pride needed considerable time to begin to heal. I used this quiet period productively. I consulted extensively with my trusted attorney and completely and meticulously updated my will. I established a sophisticated trust with extremely strict and specific clauses. I reorganized my entire finances to absolutely ensure that no one could ever again manipulate or improperly access my assets. Also, recognizing my own need, I began professional therapy. I painfully realized that allowing such a situation to exist for so long revealed deep personal issues that I urgently needed to address. Why did I accept being treated this way for years? Why did I confuse genuine love with financial provision? Why was my self-worth so tied to being financially useful? Brutally painful, but absolutely necessary questions. 3 weeks and 4 days after the devastating confrontation, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Lucas. He said hesitantly, his voice careful, "Mom, can we talk? In person, please?" I replied cautiously, "Just you? Or does Amanda plan to come too?" There was a significant pause before he answered. Lucas said, just me, please, Mom." I agreed. We set a date for the next day, mid-afternoon. When Lucas arrived, he looked visibly different. More physically tired, perhaps, with pronounced dark circles under his eyes. But something fundamental in his posture, in how he carried his body, indicated a real internal change. There was no longer that casual, unconscious arrogance he had always carried. He said immediately as soon as he crossed the door, "I didn't come to ask for money. I didn't come to negotiate. I came solely and exclusively to apologize deeply and sincerely." I silently gestured to the sofa. We sat together, keeping a respectful space between us. I simply said, "I am listening with full attention." Lucas took a deep, slow breath, organizing his thoughts. He said in a measured voice, "You were absolutely right, about absolutely everything. We deliberately built a completely unsustainable life based on selfish, childish assumptions about your infinite financial availability. I completely lost it. I allowed completely wrong priorities to dominate all my important decisions." I answered carefully, measuring my words. "And Amanda? Does she genuinely share this understanding, or does she still see me as the villain?" Lucas looked away uncomfortably. He spoke with obvious difficulty. "Amanda is deeply angry still, very. She genuinely believes you are being completely irrational, overly controlling, deliberately cruel." He said without any surprise, "I expected exactly this reaction from her." Lucas continued, looking at me again. "But I don't share her view at all. Not anymore. I've spent the last few weeks doing real math for the first time, taking an honest, brutal look at our spending. It's genuinely scary, Mom. Terrifying. We have virtually no genuine savings of our own. We were completely and utterly dependent on you, and we didn't even realize the extent of it." I felt a small but real twinge of hope being born. I asked carefully, "What do you intend to do concretely about this situation?" Lucas straightened his posture, determination visible. He replied with growing conviction, "I've already started taking concrete action. I've formally requested overtime at work. I've cut out all unnecessary subscriptions, streaming, expensive gym memberships, subscription boxes. I'm selling the sports car, that damn car we bought with your card. We're going to use absolutely all of this money to finally start some real, substantial savings." She said, genuinely impressed. "These are important and significant steps." Lucas looked directly and intensely at me, complete vulnerability. He spoke in a deeply choked voice. "I also realized something much, much worse than financial matters. We weren't genuinely visiting you just for pleasure, for love, for wanting your company. Always, without exception, there was a hidden agenda. We always needed something material. We always wanted money. I turned my own mother into a mere cold business transaction. It sickens me deeply to acknowledge that." Tears began to form rapidly in my own eyes. I replied with overflowing emotion. Honest recognition is always the first fundamental step towards real change. Lucas took my hand carefully between his. He said with intensity, "I desperately want to rebuild our relationship. The completely right way, with absolutely no money involved. Just mother and son, real family. But I need to know, is there genuine room for that? Or have I irreparably destroyed everything?" I squeezed his hand firmly back. I spoke with absolute sincerity. "There will always be room for genuine change and real effort, Lucas, always. You are my son. That love is unconditional, even when actions hurt deeply." We talked for hours on that transformative day. He shared extensive details about the significant difficulties they face now without constant financial support. These were brutally tough weeks, he candidly admitted. Intense arguments with Amanda were practically daily. She was not easily accepting of the new, drastically reduced lifestyle, but Lucas seemed genuinely and deeply committed. We talked at length about core values, about what truly matters in life. We reminisced about precious moments from his childhood, when we were genuinely happy with much, much less materially. When he finally left at dusk, I hugged him for the first time in years in a completely genuine way, without that ever-present underlying tension, without discomfort or falseness. The following months brought gradual but consistent and visible changes. Lucas began visiting me weekly without fail, always alone at first. We talked about simple, everyday things: work, rediscovered hobbies, realistic future plans, no financial requests, no hidden agendas, just real conversations between mother and son. Amanda remained consistently distant, almost hostile when our paths occasionally crossed. Lucas freely admitted that the marriage was extremely strained. She deeply resented the situation, alternately blaming both me and him. But Lucas seemed significantly firmer in his renewed convictions. In the 4th month, something completely unexpected happened. Lucas showed up accompanied by Amanda. She looked deeply uncomfortable, but distinctly less hostile than before. Amanda said with obvious difficulty, each word costing effort, "Lucas absolutely insisted that I come. He said we urgently needed to talk properly." I responded in a measured but not cold way. "I genuinely appreciate you making the effort to come." We all sat in the formal room. The atmosphere was undoubtedly tense, but not as explosive as before. Lucas spoke first, his voice firm. "Mom, we want to show you something important." He carefully handed over a neat folder. Inside were extremely detailed financial spreadsheets, complete bank statements, and meticulously planned budgets. Lucas continued explaining, "These are our complete financial records for the last 4 months. Every penny earned recorded, every penny spent documented. We have managed to save $12,340. We have paid absolutely every bill on time, no delays, no new debt incurred." I examined the documents carefully and extensively. I was genuinely and deeply impressed. He said honestly, "This is excellent and extremely disciplined work." Amanda spoke for the first time, her voice surprisingly soft. "It wasn't remotely easy." I answered honestly, "Truly important and meaningful things are rarely easy." She continued, effort visible in every word. "Lucas forced me to see some extremely difficult and painful truths about how we systematically treated you, about our completely unrealistic and selfish expectations." I just listened intently, allowing her to continue without interruption. Amanda said with increasing difficulty, "I won't hypocritically pretend that I agree with absolutely everything you did. I still genuinely believe it was overly harsh, perhaps cruel. But I understand why. I understand your reasons." It was a beginning. Small, imperfect, hesitant, but unmistakably a real beginning. Over the next few weeks, I gradually began rebuilding fragile bonds with both of them. Occasional dinners, always with expenses carefully divided equally, progressively deeper conversations, occasional genuine laughter. Amanda still maintained a certain defensive guard, but gradually, slowly, she began to open up more. She eventually admitted that she grew up in a dysfunctional family where money literally bought affection, and she had reproduced this destructive pattern without consciously realizing it. She was actively trying to unlearn it, she said quietly. When the 6th month finally arrived, I formally called them to an important meeting. He said solemnly, "You have successfully completed the allotted period. You have demonstrated real, measurable, and sustainable change. I am genuinely proud." Lucas smiled widely, relief evident. I continued carefully, "But I want to make it crystal clear. We will never, under any circumstances, return to the previous arrangement. Never. That door has closed permanently. However, I am willing and interested in offering different, appropriately structured support. Amanda asked cautiously, "What specific type of support?" I explained in detail. "I will establish a robust education fund should you decide to have children in the future. I can and will also help out on a case-by-case basis in absolutely real emergencies after full, transparent discussion. But regular allowances, unlimited credit cards, casual financing of luxuries, that is absolutely and permanently over." Lucas nodded understandingly and appreciatively. He said sincerely, "It's more than fair, more than we deserve." Amanda also agreed, although with less obvious enthusiasm, but without objection. But there was another significant outstanding issue that needed to be addressed. He said, taking a deep breath, "I have also completely updated my legal will." Both were immediately alert, tension visible. I continued explaining methodically. 70% of my total assets will go to carefully selected charities focused specifically on financial literacy and women's economic empowerment. The remaining 30% will be divided between you, but exclusively within a sophisticated trust with gradual release strictly tied to verifiable milestones of ongoing financial responsibility. I saw Amanda slowly process this, clearly not exactly what she had originally expected. But Lucas completely surprised everyone by smiling genuinely. He said with conviction, "It sounds absolutely perfect, Mom. Your legacy should fully reflect your core values. And helping others avoid making our terrible mistakes is genuinely noble." Amanda took considerably longer, but finally nodded in silent agreement as well. The following years were spent rebuilding slowly but steadily. Lucas prospered significantly in his work, eventually receiving a significant promotion to senior management. Amanda relaunched her boutique with true focus and consistent dedication, ultimately transforming it into a genuinely profitable and sustainable business. They had a beautiful son, my first grandson, whom I met without a shadow of a doubt. I contributed generously to his educational fund as originally promised. But Lucas and Amanda never, not once, asked for anything more. Our family gatherings became genuinely and deeply enjoyable. We talked authentically about life, dreams, and everyday challenges, finally as a true family, not as a bank institution and desperate customers. One quiet autumn afternoon, years after that initial devastating confrontation, Lucas and I were quietly drinking coffee on my sunny porch. He said reflectively, looking at the horizon, "You know, that terrible day when I burst into your house completely enraged, ready for war, was, paradoxically, the best gift you could have given me in life." I looked surprised, eyebrows raised. Lucas continued thoughtfully, "If you had continued to support us indefinitely, I would never have truly grown up. I would never have discovered my own true worth, my genuine capacity, my inner strength. I would have remained forever a dependent child disguised as a functioning adult." I replied with deep emotion. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Every cell in my maternal body wanted to give in immediately, to protect, to make things easier, to solve all the problems. But I knew intuitively that true love sometimes necessarily seems cruel on the surface." Lucas smiled widely, eyes shining. He said with conviction, "It didn't seem cruel after I finally understood completely. It felt like love in its purest, most selfless form." Precious moments like this intensely validated every bitter tear of that extremely painful process. Today, I look back on that watershed moment as a fundamental transformation. I could easily have continued being a convenient traveling wallet, buying superficial moments of companionship with easy money. It would undoubtedly have been easier in the short term, but I would have lost something infinitely more valuable than any amount of money: authentic relationships built on an absolutely solid foundation of genuine mutual respect. The price Lucas and Amanda paid was significant temporary discomfort, deep ego wounds, and the need to grow up abruptly. But what they gained was infinitely greater: real autonomy, genuine pride in their achievements, and true freedom to live authentic lives unsubsidized by artificial means. For myself, I've regained fundamental dignity that I had gradually surrendered without conscious awareness. I've established healthy boundaries that protect both myself and those I love from destructive dynamics. My legacy won't be merely financial. It will be the fundamental lesson that true love often requires difficult fortitude. That genuinely supporting someone doesn't mean hindering their growth. That the most precious gifts often come wrapped in painful challenges. That desperate cry over the phone about a blocked card echoed like an absolutely necessary alarm. It brutally woke us all from dangerously comfortable illusions. And although the awakening was brutal and painful, the reality we find on the other side is infinitely more rewarding than the artificial dream we maintained. If I could go back, I would do it all again without hesitation. Every difficult moment, every tear shed, every painful confrontation, because in the end, I didn't just save my hard-earned financial wealth, I saved my real family. And that is a wealth that absolutely no amount of money could ever buy.